I want to welcome Tara Fisher to today's show. Great to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I love when people have different backgrounds, but I equally love it when people have fairly standard backgrounds.
When people have a non-traditional background, it can bring in different perspectives, right, in your workplace. Things can be stagnant if you have people from very similar backgrounds, very similar education. It can get stagnant. So my hope is to bring in other perspectives so that people can see things from a different um, perspective, right? To
Yeah.
find those solutions, right? Because sometimes we need that little different viewpoint to just find like a little thing that's a better solution.
Do you
So,
think
I mean,
do you
yeah,
think from a colleague, coworker standpoint, they have more confidence and interest in working alongside someone who has essentially the ideal parallel background that they do, the same overlapping background? Or do you think that they look at it as, I love working with people who have varying backgrounds that are quite different because it gives that diversity? I'm not sure which one gives more confidence to a coworker.
I think it depends on the person. I think it depends on what they're comfortable with because there's different kinds of working styles,
Yeah.
right? I'm the type of person, I like lots of diversity in thought and people and experiences, and I'm a lifelong learner. I will take on any project and learn about it and become what we call a subject matter expert, even though I'm not officially supposed to in my role, but I can't help it, right?
Yeah.
But that's me. That doesn't mean that it's not valuable. Somebody who goes to their job every day and they do their job and they go home and it is the same thing every day and they are comfortable with that and they are happy in their lives and they feel successful and they don't need all of those shifting changes because maybe they have a lot of shifting changes like in other parts of their lives. So I think that it just depends on the person,
Yeah.
right? I think it depends on the comfort level, maybe where they are in their career. Maybe somebody who is early in their career and followed a certain path or was told to follow a certain path, may not they may not look at somebody like myself and be like, "I don't that's not what I was taught to do," you
Yeah.
know? "I don't understand how she got here. I don't understand how this happened." And it's just I've worked in a lot of different places. That's a good and bad thing, but being a learning experience designer, it's a really good thing. We can know lots of different things, and I know how different places and different departments work and how they work together and how they could work together better, right?
Yeah. There's a time and place and a need for both the specialist and the
Yes.
generalist. You really need
Yeah.
to have the opportunity for people to be really deep into the specificity of the technical elements of those roles, as well as the larger picture person that could get it 60% of the way there because they're a generalist and they have the ability to just pick up and learn a subject matter to the point of getting the ball rolling or getting it a little
Right.
farther and getting it maybe even the problem solved, maybe not perfectly, but really well and good enough. And so having a team that is diverse that incorporates both of those learning styles, mentalities, and individuals is it's an all-star team.
I can't tell you how many great experiences I've had over my career working with great teams. And sometimes you bond together maybe under not so great circumstances, like you have a leader that's not so great,
Sure.
and you commiserate together. But um, it, it it really is important for people to work together. I know, especially nowadays, because everybody's working remote. Not everyone, but a larger portion of people than 5 years ago, 6 years ago.
Yeah.
So all the more reason you are just bringing in different people in workspaces just in general because the ability to come in remote positions, it helps a whole swath of people come into jobs that they weren't able to do before,
Yeah.
right? So that already is bringing in more people and more talent and more skills and more perspectives so that we can shift how work is
Yeah.
because that's my goal.
Yeah. It's great from an internal standpoint, the ability to work differently internally, but also from a talent pool, the ability to find anybody that you're looking for a specific role from not just your where you live right here, but the whole Could be international, globally, but depends on what your
Mhm.
needs are. If I was curious about maybe working for cruise lines, I'd probably have to live somewhere coastal, Miami or something, but that's where most of the action's happening. That's not necessarily the case today. I can work
Mm.
for travel agencies, I can work for cruise lines or living anywhere. Point of the matter is that there's a lot of pluses and minuses, benefits and challenges that have emerged from the remote working style. And I would argue that there are more positives that have come out of it. And I would also argue that the challenges or negatives aren't universal and aren't necessary. So if there's things that you dislike about it, you can find another job that is either hybrid or in person. It's not like it has to be so binary.
And I think that's a huge thing for me personally, because if we wanna talk about the transition of careers, I went from being a birth and postpartum doula, not working in offices, not working in corporate environments, working for myself, so working at home, and then obviously working in hospitals and birth centers and homes. And so I was a very nomadic worker, and so that transition to that corporate space and the office space, it's not that I hadn't done it before, but that transition was a bit of a shock after a few years, and I didn't really want it. Like, I didn't wanna go back to an office. I
Yeah.
hated being in offices. I really hate it. I
Where do
just
you
I
Yeah, I understand.
I'm just gonna be honest, like,
That's
I
fine.
will tell any future employer, any client, I know it's a necessary evil. I know. I
It's not a
understand, and
necessary evil. It is in some
well,
cases a necessary evil, or in some cases, the people
in
that are
some
choosing that you have
cases.
to be behind a desk,
Yeah,
but it's still the work that I like doing. There are
yeah,
trade-offs and you have more control over a lot of these things. I do believe that
yeah,
you don't have to suffer through work. You should actually ideally
yeah.
find the job that fits you and that you're happy and fulfilled through. So maybe there's the misnomer or the perception that this is what work looks like. Here's the definition of it and fit it
Mhm,
into this box. But really, it's a lot more broad and diverse. And there's a very liberal definition of work today. There's so many things that you can
mhm.
do. In fact, you can
Yeah.
criticize it. There's a lot of people getting paid to do things that at my age, I don't get it. I don't understand younger generations. And
People for it.
that's great. If they're paying
So
for it, that's exactly what the market is all about.
right.
If there's a need, you can fill it.
I'm not saying that I necessarily understand all of it, but I do understand it from their perspective of seeing people being able to create things and make money off
Yeah.
of them. That's amazing. I'm a musician. Like, musicians don't make money from their
No, but they're often very happy.
They are very happy people.
Yeah.
We do it because it's like breathing.
You
So,
have to. So let's talk about that non-traditional background. Tell us about it. Where does
um,
that start?
I don't wanna I'll go back to the beginning, but I'll try to synthesize it a little bit. I probably worked in more jobs than my age. I won't share my age, but it's probably older than you think, because that's what people seem to say. But I do have a lot more gray hair now because 'cause I've been growing it out. Maybe people can guess now. But,
Regardless, it gives you maybe confidence and also people
yeah,
have more confidence in you. I'm
right.
embracing the gray. I think it makes
I am
me
too.
people take me a little more seriously maybe.
Yeah, I am fine with it. And it's cheaper too. I don't have to worry
Yeah.
about going to the hairstyles. But I'm a Kansas girl, so I grew up on a farm about an hour outside of the Kansas City area, so very close to the Missouri state line. And so my first job was being a hostess at a restaurant called Joe's Barn in Stanley, Kansas. It was a buffet restaurant, um, and it was my first job. I was like 16.
Does it get any better than that? It's not cliche. This is like slice of America right here.
Yeah,
It's
it is,
quite
it is.
perfect and ideal.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a lot of great stories like that. So, it was a really great job. We had a lot of people that from my local high school that worked there, but there were a lot of older individuals that had worked there for a long time. It had been around for decades. It was literally in an old barn that was over 100 years old. The floors were like this, so it was real fun serving on those floors and walking back and forth. So within 3 months of hosting and seating people, they made me a server. And that was it wasn't a hard serving job in terms of it was a buffet restaurant, so you're not really serving food, but you're serving drinks and you're picking up lots of plates and bussing and things like that. Even at 16, I ended up training new servers, right? So it's always been a theme. from the very beginning. So that's where I started, right? And fast forward a few years, my 20s, they're very blurry. I was in a rock band. I was working corporate jobs, temp jobs. I was not happy with anything I was doing. I was also doing graphic design at the time. I really enjoyed graphic design, but it wasn't, I also didn't have the degree, right? It was something I had learned on the job. I had worked at a .com and learned it on the job. Everything I know, I've learned on the job.
Did it bother you? Did you have
Everything.
an imposter syndrome that you didn't go to school for
Absolutely.
this or learn?
I don't know that I had the confidence. I just did them. I My father became a pretty successful man, some could say, because of other factors, systemic factors, but there is something to be said for the fact that he did not have a college degree and ended up being the CEO of a company, right? Now, granted, he would have gone to college in the late 60s and early 70s, but I think knowing he had those experiences gave me a little bit of confidence because he would always talk about that, how he had imposter syndrome and he would
He
go
did.
to these, yeah. And he would go to these huge like stockbroker meetings in New York and everyone else there they're from wealthy, rich families and they all went to Ivy League colleges.
Fancy
So
degrees and
yeah.
pinstripe suits.
Yes. So I have a lot more confidence now, but I wouldn't say back then I did. I still very much had imposter syndrome and it carried over probably until I would even say in the last couple years. Really. It's only been in the last couple years that I've worked with some really smart people at Ivy League schools and I could hold my own. So I was like, I'm okay.
What changed in the last few years that your mind shifted and you were suddenly past that? Obviously, if
Um,
you've been working with people that are themselves highly intelligent, qualified, successful, and you're part of that group, you can now see yourself. But I imagine you were part of groups like that in years past, and you don't
mhm,
describe yourself as getting over the imposter
yeah.
syndrome then. So what changed?
I don't know, getting older, maybe
Yeah.
the state of the world and just wanting to be like, I don't have time for this anymore. I don't know. I think it's when I just finally gave up on the dream. I always wanted to be a teacher, even from being like a little kid. Even I lived on a farm. I would go in the forest behind the farm and pretend that I was teaching students. I don't know,
Yeah.
chipmunks or squirrels or whatever. But I knew that I never wanted to teach children. I think I knew that maybe I didn't have quite the patience for that. And it just wasn't, I don't know, it wasn't really very appealing to me. So I always thought that I wanted to be a college professor. So that's, I think, really where my mind went for a long time. Because I was the first person in my family to get a bachelor's degree, I wanted to go beyond that. And but financially it just wasn't really possible. And of course, topics that I'm interested in are definitely not high paying topics. I almost went to grad school for ethnobotany. So I just really struggled with that. And I think I had to come to terms with the fact that I don't have to be a professor at a university to help adult learners. And in fact, I am sometimes doing a better job of
Yeah.
teaching adult learners than especially professors that have been doing this a long time and they haven't changed the way they teach. And it doesn't mean that they're not smart. It doesn't mean that they're not great at what they do. But there's a lot of people, I guess I've just learned in this field, there's a lot of people up on the top echelons that are good at what they do, but they cannot teach people how to do what they do. That's a totally different skill.
Yeah, this keeps coming up in conversations, and it's one that I have been sensitive to in years past, just professionally speaking, that the conversation literally this has come up several times in on this show with guests where you have a top performer who then the obvious next step is to move them into management, but then they're not doing the things that they were so good at and might even actually enjoy, in addition to maybe not being such great people leaders.
Yeah,
And it's really hard to figure out how to continue to reward someone for a job that they're very good at and want to do when their earning potential maxes out for the value of what that role really demands.
right.
And you just automatically, we promote somebody. We say,
Mhm.
congratulations, you did a good job. And now you are in charge of other people. And there's so many other skills necessary that have to be either intrinsic in some ways, and as well as some that are learned skills that you experience, and you have a mentor that teaches you, and you go through the trial and error and you make mistakes and you learn from them. And over time, you get better at that job. But not everybody is going to get better at that job. And yet, it's
Mhm.
typically what we do for people that are good at their job or subject matter experts. And they eventually get put into positions where they are, let's call it teaching, whether they are a
Mhm.
manager, mentor, advisor,
Yeah.
professor, head of a department, head of a company. There's so many skills that are necessary for you to be good at teaching and
Mhm.
mentorship.
And the funny thing that even though I said I didn't really want to teach children, so watching my kids go through elementary school, especially my son, he's my youngest, and he went to a different elementary school than my oldest. So I just watched these amazing teachers work with all of these elementary school kids, and just watching them do the things that they do in the classroom, I'm like, oh, wait, we could learn a lot from them.
Yeah.
So that I think we just get caught up in the I gotta be an adult, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. People are putting expectations on us.
Mhm.
It's time that
Yeah.
we take control and put the expectations on ourselves that we want for ourselves,
Yeah.
the goals and vision for ourselves. And yeah, like I said, the gray in my beard that has been emerging over the last 10 years, I'm happy. I'm embracing it because
Mhm.
it makes me appear more educated and senior or
Mhm.
experienced and knowledgeable. Those are all assumptions, by the way.
Right.
Assumptions of anyone else when they see somebody who is gray. The assumption is that you've been through some stuff, you have experience, and I have what to learn from you. I hope that's the perception, at least. But
Mhm.
the assumption is that you're knowledgeable. And in some ways, it could serve you maybe the opposite negatively. Maybe it doesn't help to serve you well, is that if you look very young, and I know I have a few friends who are mistaken for children sometimes, or college age students, and they're not. They're in their 40s, and they're often treated as children.
Yeah. It's been something that I'm grateful for it, but now I'm obviously aging and I'm like, I'm fine with that, but it was a struggle even in the last probably 10 years, 11 years of getting back to the corporate world and not being taken seriously. Or I'm not a I can do a lot of corporate speak, but I also don't really speak to people differently, whether they're a CEO or they're a crew member at a fast food restaurant. I'm not going to speak to somebody any differently. And it's actually been brought up when I was working for a law firm a few years ago. It was brought up in one of my reviews of how easily I talk to people, how easily I would talk to general counsel of some of the biggest retailers in the world. And I was a doula. In the birth room, everybody's the same.
Yeah. Where do
Everybody's
you
the
think
same.
there's more foul language, in a birth room or in a corporate conference
Yeah,
room?
corporate boardroom. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's not a lot of cussing in the birth rooms, especially when a doula is there.
Yeah, their goal is to make everything go smoothly and be at peace,
Right,
and
right.
help the harmony.
If they wanna cuss,
Go
by
for it.
all
Yeah.
means.
Whatever you need.
I was a rock musician. You don't have to yeah. I live in the Midwest, so we have Midwest nights,
Do you think that's
and it
true?
is oh, yeah. And insidious. It's actually worse than because it's everybody thinks they're being nice, and they're actually being cruel to each other.
Yeah.
Having worked with lots of people all over the world, I think some of that has influenced me, so I don't have as much patience for the Midwest nice now
Mhm.
because I think it does more harm than good on a personal level and on a professional level.
Yeah.
I just think it doesn't mean you have to be cruel. It doesn't mean what is it? The old adage: "Mean what you say and say what you mean, but try not to say it mean."
Yeah.
Right? I'm not always successful at that. I'm a human being, but I just think that it's just really important right now to be direct.
Yeah.
I just
Transparency.
no no dancing around the issue. No one wants dancing around right now.
Yeah. I agree. And also being that Midwest nice. also is at times it can be inefficient and unproductive, where
Yes.
you're not getting to the point fast enough. You're not being transparent. You're just trying to be nice and not too imposing on the other person. And sometimes get to the point, just say it.
Yeah. And let's say someone does something that upsets someone else on your team, right? And you're the leader. And instead of telling that person that they upset someone or intervening if you need to, right? You just keep those two people a little bit further away from each other. Don't put them on a project together.
Yeah,
That doesn't solve the problem. And if the person that offended the other person or hurt the other person's feelings doesn't know that they did that, how can they correct it? Right?
yep,
How can they correct it? I'm a parent. I see my kids mirror me every day in good ways and bad. And I am trying to learn to be a better parent every day. So it's just all of those things together. I'm just trying to help people be better people, right? So that they feel happy in their lives and they feel successful, whatever that means for them, because it's definitely different for every person.
absolutely.
Um,
It,
so
it,
I just want them to enjoy their job as much as they can. It's still a job, but I've been lucky. I've been able to work at a job being a doula. It was my calling. Like it the greatest job in the world.
so what
Um,
made you leave it?
it doesn't pay well. The hours and the money, it's not a sustainable model for working. I was training to be a midwife, and you have to work on your own and be on call 24/7 many times to get your even certified and preceptors and all of these things. It's really a profession for people who can afford to do it. And at the time, I was a married woman who was a stay-at-home mom, but I didn't wanna just stay home. I wanted to do some other thing, but I wasn't quite sure what it was. Initially, I thought that I would go back to work after 6 months, and I was just like, "No way. I can't. I don't this is not what I envisioned in my life. I have to do something different." And I have the ability to not that it wasn't hard going from 2 incomes to 1, but I had the ability to squeeze things together and get it figured out, and then the doula work allowed me to be able to work part-time, so run my own business, right, but still be able to be with my kids most of the time, right? I did most appointments in the evenings and on the weekends when my husband was home. Obviously, births, you can't plan any of that, but I had backup upon backup situations so that if the kids needed to be watched, but that's a lot. That's a lot on a family. There's a high divorce rate for birth workers because it's a very demanding job, and birth workers tend to maybe bend over backwards a little too much for their clients because they love what they do, right?
Yeah,
They're so dedicated to what they do that they cause harm in their own lives. And certainly that was the case. My marriage ended, and I'm sure that contributed to it. There were lots of other issues, but I had to go from I tried to make it work. In 2014, I went through a pretty financially devastating divorce and went from being this kind of part-time doula training to be a midwife, but didn't have a full-time job and hadn't had a full-time job in, I want to say 7, 8 years. It was, I would literally that year was catching babies and cleaning toilets I was trying to piece together contract jobs, right? So that I could still work on call,
yeah.
right? And then at some point in time, I lost a babysitter, like in my regular babysitter. And I think it was like I don't know. There were just a number of things that came up, and there was like a Saturday that I came home from a childbirth education class that I had taught, and I just I came home to my boyfriend at the time, who is now my husband, and I just said I can't do it anymore. I can't. I was crying. I was in tears. I'll even tear up now. It was the greatest job. I was really good at it, but it's just you can't make money at it. You just can't. It's
It's
not.
similar.
Yeah,
It's similar
so
to
I get teary-eyed about it because it's
yeah,
just it's
because
sad, it's sad.
it's sad because you want to live your truth. You want to really
Mhm,
take advantage of all of your strengths, and you want to do these things that are
mhm,
so meaningful to you. But at
yep,
the end of the day,
mhm,
you need to support yourself, and you need to be able to reconcile the time spent
mhm,
with the value that you're earning for that time. And it's so hard sometimes for some passions to really line up with those, align those,
Yeah.
the value with what I'm good at, what I love, and what's going to
Mhm.
earn enough.
Right.
It's hard. Musicians too. You're a musician. Same
Yeah.
thing. Like people who are musicians, oftentimes that dream is, well, I wish I could do this for a living. I wish I could support my
Yeah.
family and do this.
Yeah.
And it's actually similar to a doula in that it's an expression of your emotions. It's that I'm
Yeah.
here in service of the audience, the mother, the family. I'm here in service, and I'm going to give a
Yeah.
little, not a little, a lot of myself to you, and I'm going to leave it all up out there. And you feel a purpose, and it's weird hours, and it's hard to plan around, and you never know when things come up, and it's volatile, but it's
Yeah.
meaningful work.
It is very
And
meaningful.
and the struggling artist or the struggling musician, there's a reason why people use those terms so frequently.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's a sad thing in our society that we don't pay our teachers, we don't pay our healthcare workers, we don't pay all the people who lift us up,
Yeah.
even our musicians, right?
Yep.
Because without music, we're just not human, honestly.
Yeah. Is music, should that be considered sort of mental health therapy?
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
I in fact have doulaed for music therapists, right?
Wow.
So yeah, yeah, it is life-giving. Literally, my husband's a stroke survivor, and that is what brought him back to life, being able to go back and sing and play guitar because he thought he wouldn't be able to do it, you
Yeah.
know? But that's what keeps him going.
When do you think the arts start getting covered by health insurance?
When we start forming more musicians unions and localities, I would love to see insurance cover a lot of things like doula services
Sure.
and massage therapy. I believe that if everyone got massages and we had more somatic work done to ourselves and doing for ourselves, we would be a lot healthier. You were talking about books. I was thinking about this before we met today, and I was thinking about how, like in my world, in learning experience design and workplace training, like a lot of people talk about a lot of management books and things like that, right? And the book that like drives me is actually The Body That Keeps the Score by
Yeah.
Dr. Yeah. So
I've
that's more of a guiding principle for me because I'm trauma informed. So that's why I apply it to all of my work, because I believe that probably 95% of us are walking around completely traumatized and we have no idea that we are.
Yeah, I
So,
think so.
and each other.
The Body Keeps the Score by Bezel van der Kolk, MD. He's a doctor. That's so many times I've heard this book mentioned or recommended. I've never read it, but it's clearly the hallmark of mind body. A lot of people have brought it up.
Yeah. Some people, there are debates about RIs, which is like a different
Yeah,
type of
it
MRI than the other kind.
measures the
Yeah.
brain
So there's
frequencies.
debates. Yeah. So there's debates about the accuracy of that. But I'm an abuse survivor. I have PTSD. I
Yeah.
read that book. That that is a good book for abuse survivors. It's hard. It's really hard to get through. Um,
What was the big takeaway for
but
you from that book that was like that you're still thinking about things, that something from the book that was really instrumental in helping you process?
that childhood events rewire us, and we don't necessarily have control over how we respond to things because it has rewired us, right? So it's not my fault. I'm not saying that I'm not responsible for my reaction to things because that's what I'm always continually working on. And I'm not always good at good reactions to things. But um, having that feeling of this is something that happened to me and like my brain rewired itself. I don't have any control over what that was. I don't, it's not just about how the abuse was not my fault. It's about the fact that like my response to it is also not my fault. The way my brain rewired itself is not my fault. But
That's
my
brutal.
responsibility is to understand this and know this and work on myself because my abuse and my PTSD will cause me to react in ways to people that causes harm because I learned harm, right? So I don't want to cause harm. These are things that are really important to me. And a quote that I always remembered when I was a doula was, "What will she remember?" Birth is a very visceral experience, and people remember things that you wouldn't think that they would remember. And things that don't seem harmful can sit in a person's mind for many years, and no one knows.
Yeah.
It's a big responsibility to be in a birth room with somebody, and it's a little scary,
Yeah.
but it's also like totally worthwhile. But in my work now, like when people say, "Oh, aren't you stressed out about this? Aren't you stressed out about this?" I'm like, well, unless you've been in my situation a few times, I'm not really that stressed about it. I will get stressed about things. I will get anxiety about things. I'm like anybody else, but I'm really good at being able to take a step back and go, okay, no one is actually dying right now. We can just take a breath and figure out what we're going to do from here. But many years of being a doula and being an abuse survivor, I was always in that like hyperactivity mode of always just, and I still do. I want to do so much that I do too much, and that I have to stop myself from doing that because I will get too involved in something and have it be too much of, I don't know, like of my energy, right? So I've slowly learned over time how to pull that back and go, wait, my energy doesn't belong here, right? That's going to be not a waste of my energy, but like a draining of my energy that's maybe not necessary. And for a long time, I didn't know how to balance that in my work and in my personal life. I still struggle, like I said, but I'm getting better at it. So,
That's remarkable. I've never heard that before characterized or described how, when talking about abuse or trauma,
mhm,
the subject of allowing or helping the individual accept that it's not their fault is its own challenge. It's a mountain to climb and to get over. And it's true. It's never their fault. I've
no.
never heard someone then talk about the results of that. The reaction or the rewiring was also not your fault. You're not in control of
Mhm,
that. That wasn't you. And to describe it that
yep.
way allows for more patience and accepting for somebody to continue to recover beyond what they thought. Okay, I'm accepting that it was not my fault. The abuse
Yeah.
or trauma, I get that. Took me a while. Now I'm past that. But there is there is residual effect that lingers
Mhm,
about other things. It manifests in other different ways. And to talk about that separately as its own individual challenge that need to be overcome and accepting of those things too. I now react this way as a result of that trauma.
mhm,
And
yep.
if I react that way, that's not my fault. And I'm working on now rewiring my brain back. Is that possible also? Do you, or
You
can you,
can't really rewire it. I mean, like, it's more of a
you get
constant
you
awareness.
get one rewire. You're only.
I
I'm
mean,
serious though.
you know
I'm curious. Like I do know this. I know this for a fact
yeah.
that when one experiences abuse, trauma, and many other terrible events in one's life, the younger you are, probably the more impactful it is for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Perhaps I'm not a mental health therapist. I'm not a professional, but I do believe that those things stick with you, and it does rewire your brain. And that worries me all the
Mhm.
time as a parent. You talk about the challenges of being a parent.
Yeah.
I worry about the at various times in my life, like that I have reacted viscerally to a child. And then now I
Mhm.
look back, I'm like, that was a child. Like they don't have control. They're
Mhm.
just doing what children do. And for me to have the wrong
Yeah.
expectations and therefore the wrong reaction, we all go through this at times as parents. Some worse than
Yeah.
others, maybe,
Yeah.
definitely. But the question is, if you go through trauma and abuse and your brain is rewired at a young age, what would it take to help rewire it back to a healthier state later on in life?
His suggestions are really, you're not really rewiring because once you hit about 25, your brain stops really.
Yeah. And the lower
developing at that
cortex is
point.
done.
Yeah. So, and you can see why the younger a person is, like, how much more impactful that could be because there's more cells growing,
Yeah.
you got more growth earlier on than later. So, um, but I think it's a matter of being aware, doing things that will help you recover, and rest is really important. I now, when I just rest. I just sleep. I just do things for myself that are rest when I'm feeling over just too much, right? Um, but it's for me, it's been things like becoming a doula helped me heal. I don't want to say that I use my clients to help me heal, but it certainly helped me heal. Most of
All
the clients that all the clients,
all jobs are mutually beneficial, and you're there for
yeah,
when you are
yeah,
in any service providing business and you're an individual providing something, you're giving the benefits of that service, hopefully to your clients in any capacity.
yeah,
Financial services,
mhm,
healthcare, any service, you're providing that service that they need. And you are earning and learning from those experiences
right,
as well. So it should be mutually beneficial. So you're not taking advantage of them negatively. You are leveraging an opportunity and exposure to
right,
situations and individuals that help you as a human being grow, even if you're in the service providing fit position.
right, right. And I think the thing about being a doula was it was like I saw this. It was like the embodiment of this type of person, and I wanted to be that person. I wanted to
Mm.
be this like calm Earth Mother. Like I'm just everything's cool, and I'm not stressed about anything. I'm not like that. But in the birth room, I am very quiet and I am very calm, and it is a very different space, and I'm a different person in that space, and it's very calming, and it's I know, and things can be chaotic in birth, sure, but the space itself, like, there's nothing abnormal about what you're doing in a birth. Like,
Yeah.
it's a natural state of being. So, it's not like breaking a leg or something. I don't know, there's something comforting about you talk about being in nature. It's like being in nature. You're watching nature happen, maybe in a hospital room, and doesn't feel very natural, but it is watching nature happen, but doing all of those things now, not everybody's gonna be able to become a doula or want to become a doula to help with their abuse or to help recover from their abuse. But there's things like I went through yoga teacher training, not because I wanted to be a yoga teacher, but because I needed that deeper practice to help me heal, right? And it did. It helped me heal. And sometimes I take that healing on to other people and I like to share it with other people. This is what I did. This is what helped me. But then I can take it all the way back to learning experience design, right? You're
Yeah.
trying not to cause harm. And if I have to put somebody through an hour-long training that is they're not gonna learn anything from, and let's say there's 1,000 people in this place, and everyone has to go through an hour-long training that they're not gonna learn anything from, they're not even gonna remember 5 seconds after they walk out the door or after they take the e-learning, and you've lost 1,000 production hours.
Yeah.
That's causing harm. That's
Yeah.
causing harm to your business, it's causing harm to your workers, it's what a waste of time. And so it's just I know everybody, we need to have compliance training. We need to check off the box, but what a missed opportunity for people to learn something new. I just I know that it's not always possible. We have to work within certain parameters in the working world and on projects, right? But I'm always trying to bring that I don't know, that curiosity, but also don't cause harm. You
Yeah.
want to help your people do their job better. Help them do their job better. Don't make training miserable.
This is actually a perfect segue. Remember finding myself in a meeting one time, and the meeting must have been pretty boring and feeling unproductive because I looked around the room and started calculating the cost of that meeting. A 1 hour meeting with about 7 or 8 people in a room who had fairly well paying positions. And I remember it was an expensive hour. And I know that we can't look at every hour of this. You won't actually it actually can be counterproductive if you quantify or calculate the value of a meeting to the point where you're not scheduling meetings, and maybe that's also good. It's a balance.
Yeah.
Everything's a balance. But the point of
Yeah.
that is how do we get the best use of this time, and then the cost and the responsibility of having this number of people in a room for 1 hour to discuss something that's actually just low stakes, do you really need all those people in the room?
Mhm.
And to your point, I know we have regulatory requirements and
Mhm.
training that is sometimes necessary annually or maybe more frequently, depending on what you're doing. Those are regulations, those are necessary, and you have to do these things. I get it. How do we do these things in a way that doesn't feel like a chore, like a task, an undesirable necessity that I now have to go through this training every single quarter or every single year, and it's really
Mhm.
annoying? And what is the responsibility of the organization or maybe even the outside service providers, a consultant, a platform, somebody that's providing the ongoing L&D and certification training and all that stuff to where I'm not an idiot. It might not be super fun, but how do we make it productive? How do we make it productive? How do we actually allow somebody to do this, learn something, not feel like they have to
Mhm.
figure out how to and game the system where, all right, if I move my mouse every few
Click,
minutes,
click, click,
it
click,
thinks
click,
I'm
click.
here, right? Click through it. They're going to ask questions that are designed for me to be able to answer them, even if I didn't sit through the video or read the whole paragraph or story behind it, because it's obvious when you're given a multiple choice of three things and three of those four options are illegal or bad, then I'm just going to obviously go with the one that makes sense for me. So
Yeah.
there are ways to game these systems, and we only game them because they feel boring and unnecessary to some of us. And I
Mhm.
say some of us, I'm saying not me, I'm saying some of us in the world. We all have what to learn and remind ourselves, especially from an HR compliancy standpoint. It's actually a very important thing, as annoying as it feels.
Yeah.
I'm rambling
Yeah.
because I'm trying to get to the point of saying that these things are necessary for everyone, not just legally,
Yes.
but for us to remind ourselves, hey,
Yes.
be sensitive about how you say something, what you are doing, your conduct, your behavior, sensitive information. Who are you? How are you sending it? To whom are you sending it? All these things are very important. How do we do that in a way that is engaging, that the employee comes away actually feeling like they learned something? And then the third
Mhm.
is that it's responsible use of time and cost for the organization, not just checking off a box. Do you have a hopes and dreams and a vision of what that might look like?
I'd love for people to stop putting arbitrary time limits on training. There's literally no reason. I'm sure there's a reason that managers in California need to go through 2 hours of training, but sexual harassment training, but I think it's not based on any science. So it's yeah. So
It's
anyways,
the reality is it's qualitative, not quantitative. It needs
right,
to be a
right,
quality, engaging conversation or learning
right,
opportunity, not that I sat through these number of hours.
right. So I think here's what it comes down to is like when I was a doula, I would always talk about, and even now, I talk about high tech, high touch solutions. In births, you have a lot of technology in hospitals, right? But birth itself doesn't really need any technology, right? But birth itself doesn't really need any technology. That they didn't need to be sitting in a class and they needed to hire a babysitter for their other kid, right? What are some things that they could be doing at home? And then what we're doing in class is something that they actually want to do and is a reason to be in person. So that's where my hopes and dreams is that for whether it's compliance training or maybe more fun training, that companies and organizations realize that and government entities realize that it's not the time requirement, it's the output of what happens. So the idea is that what is the work product they can create based upon their sexual harassment training? What do they have to provide, like a homework assignment? But then you start talking about administering that in an L&D department, that's a lot of administration, right? Checking
Yeah.
assignments on people and stuff like that. I used to work for a platform that there was a learning platform that was all baked in. So those kinds of things are possible, but it really takes leadership to understand that they're costing themselves money by not investing in good training. They just don't see it because L&D people aren't good at data. Not I'm not saying that they all aren't, but a lot of them aren't. And we're getting the discipline is getting better at it, but it's a lot of it's been lagging, so we're catching up, right? Luckily, AI is
Yeah.
kind of helping with that, but that it's always been hard to prove ROI for L&D. And part of
Yeah.
that is because The discipline itself is a lot of teachers and a lot of facilitators and a lot of people that really like to engage, and they like that kind of soft skill part of communicating and collaborating with people. They're not necessarily the people that want to look at the data, and
Yeah.
that's fine. I love looking at the data. So I am always like, but project is money, because that's also, I'm a project manager. So I'm
Yeah.
just like, how can we make more money and everybody's happier?
It's like everything you have to sell to your audience. And sometimes that means
Right.
whoever's responsible for budget investing in projects at your own organization, sometimes you have to sell internally. And you talk about
Yes.
the soft skills of L&D and the individuals who are so passionate about that kind of adult education and fostering culture and growth. There's probably a lot of attrition. Let's talk about like training for like
Yeah.
skills and talent. And so retention, the ability to retain employees that are excellent at their job, high performers in any capacity, because you're giving them
Mhm.
opportunities to continue learning. You're giving them opportunities to continue learning and growing and being satisfied, satiated, fulfilled in this organization. There's a growth trajectory and opportunity for them to continue to grow. You're investing in them. And by way of doing that, and hopefully there's a lot of other things that line up and it keeps them there. But by not doing that, not giving somebody the opportunity to grow and to stay within the organization, you've put all these months or years investing into this employee who's been excellent at their job. You're just going to, lose that contract. You're done. You're letting it's a free agent that they're
Yep.
going to go to another team. Or you can work on
Mhm.
giving them opportunities at a pretty low cost relative to the cost of attrition. Because when you lose somebody, especially somebody that's admired, appreciated, and excellent at their job, there's a culture shock there too. People start questioning, Susan's gone. I'm not sure if I want to stay. Maybe I should be
Yep.
thinking
I've
about
been in
what else is
situations
out
like
there.
that. Yep.
So
Mhm.
when you talk
Yeah. Because
about selling L&D internally, you have to talk about all the factors that are not being addressed adequately at the lower tier price.
yeah. That's why this field, or I call myself all sorts of different things, but I work in learning experience design. I work in L&D training, talent development, whatever you want to call it. I also design commercial courses. It's not just internal. But it it really needs to be a top priority in organizations, because we're seeing a shift in how people are learning just in general, whether or not they go to college, right? We talked a little about that, right? So you're going to see a lot more people not going to college or getting certifications. I chose eventually to get a certification instead of getting my master's degree because it was a better return on investment. And honestly, I think organizations are going to need to see that they're going to need to provide these things, and to be able to hang on to people, quality people. It's not about giving them more money. It is, but it's not about continually promoting them, right? Promote until they
Right.
get to the highest level they can possibly get. It's just about providing them what they need in their job, which is learning, because people like to learn. Most people like to learn, even if they think that they don't, and opportunities to stretch themselves, and always getting raises. Okay. Don't cap the raises. It
Right.
doesn't mean that you need to be continually giving somebody a 10% raise every year, but don't be skimpy, because there's only a certain level that some people will get to in their careers, because that's just where their career goes, right? So, I mean, you still have to invest in them, give them opportunities to do something challenging, get their curiosity going, and that takes a lot of people, because it's L&D. Yes, we
Yeah.
have AI, and AI is going to make a whole lot of things a lot faster, but you still need people. And over time, I've been doing this a while, and consistently, there are never enough people on L&D teams. Never enough people.
Yeah.
And they're always doing so much, and they're the heartbeat of the company. I'm telling you, L&D people are the heartbeat of the company. They know everything that's going on, because we're the like counselors.
Yeah.
We are the people that the managers come to, and then they'll share things with us that we probably shouldn't know, because we're maybe an ancillary to HR, not really an.
You're safe.
But you find out things. We have our safe spaces where we discuss things and try to figure out what to do for the training. But it's an important role, and companies don't Organizations do not give it the credit that it deserves. So
That's for sure. That's for sure. 100% agree with you.
I can ramble. I'm
I
so sorry.
No, listen, you're preaching to the choir here. I can if this harking back to our earlier conversation of wishing that the things that brought you passion and joy and true flow, if they could pay the bills. If this podcast could pay the bills, I would do this all day. And I do 2-3 hour conversations, and because I could talk about this stuff forever. And some of it is maybe confirmation bias, just confirming my own belief system. So when I find someone that's aligned with those, it makes me feel right, whether I am or not, or I
Yeah.
just found somebody else who's as wrong as I am. This stuff is super interesting to me because it comes down to how to help people and individuals. And it sounds like that's been a hallmark of your entire career is what can I do to
That's my
provide
life.
a part of me to other people in service of others.
That's my whole philosophy. My life is being in service to others. That doesn't mean that I don't take care of myself. It doesn't mean that I don't take care of my own family and make sure that they're protected and things are working smoothly for them before anyone else. But my, I have an obligation as a community member to be giving back and serving. And sometimes it's donating money, sometimes it's volunteering for a nonprofit and doing these kinds of skills to help them increase their value to the community. And sometimes it's just consulting with clients and just being in service.
Yeah.
A lot of people, I wouldn't call myself a salesperson, but I guess I am because it's really just, I'm just trying to find solutions for people and just trying to help them just try to do something better. I don't have all the answers. I just don't, but I can try to help them find them, you know?
No one's expecting you to have all the answers. I think that one of the
Well, in
benefits
our
of talking out ideas with somebody else is that you, even if that other person didn't give you the right path to go down or solution, is that talking things through helps you discover it yourself sometimes.
Mhm. Yeah, sometimes it's just as far as like when you talk about meetings, there can be some really productive meetings, right? Some great brainstorming sessions, all sorts of things that can happen. But dear God, let's not do a meeting about a meeting.
Yeah.
And oh my God. And I just, if someone doesn't need to be in person, let's not do it in person. Let's make in person experiences valuable, right? That it's something you cannot do online. You cannot do on the phone. It's something you specifically can only do in person. And if you want to talk about like artistry and all the things that like influence me, I always tell people this experience. So like a year and a half ago, I went and saw Janelle Monáe and I and,
That's
and
awesome.
so I just recently listened to a podcast that she had done. I think it was before the tour, but she was talking about how she likes to curate experiences. And that's very much how I feel what I do. I'm not Janelle Monáe, but in the corporate world, but
No,
like I
it's
went to
relatable to you.
yes, because I went to go see her. She's from Kansas City, so this is her hometown. And I went to go see her at one of our famous theaters here. And it is one of my favorite places to see musicians. The sound is amazing. I know the backstage, so I can sneak around but she performed and it was probably one of the greatest experiences I've ever had at a musical performance. And I've seen a lot of concerts in my time. And so
What made it different?
um she created an experience. She created something that you would never be able to get listening to her just on your headphones, right? Or even seeing a video of her. You had to be there to feel that. To It was a theater of people that were all moving together. And it just I don't know. It was such a brilliant performance and the way she I don't know, told stories and communicated with everyone in the audience, came down in the audience, brought her I think it was her elementary school music teacher, one of her music teachers from schooling up on stage and he's like dancing around and I'm just like, "Oh my God, this is like the epitome of every music teacher's dream."
Yeah.
On stage with their famous student. But I just that performance just really inspired me. I don't know, maybe I was just, like, really receptive to it at the time because I was going through a lot of changes, but it just and so I'm just always thinking about her when I'm trying to contemplate when someone comes to me and they're like, "I need a training." It's, "Okay, what do you need? What is it you really need?" And sometimes we find out it's just an email that needs to go out, and then maybe they need to do a team outing.
Yeah,
Y
totally. The Patrick Lencioni has a book, Death by Meeting, which is
Yes.
arguably the best title of any book ever. Uh, but part of the message is don't over plan and over meet. And to your point earlier about in person, what are we going to get out of being in person? When does it have to be? And so the opposite of another one of my favorite lines is in response to a meeting, could this have been an email instead of a meeting?
Yes.
So the opposite of that would be, okay, we are having a meeting. We are gathering IRL. And so
Mhm.
how are we going to take full advantage of this time spent together? Your description of going to see Janelle Monáe in person and it being a truly life altering experience, this sense of elevated experience with so many other people. Another book, The Art of Gathering, talks about that. How are we
Yeah.
taking advantage of the time that we have invested together? We're here together. You can't get that in any other way. So, what are we doing to
Yep.
capitalize on this? And
Yeah.
all these things resonate with the importance of being together with other people in real life versus just virtual when we can and when it makes sense. So, now that we
Yeah.
have it, what are we doing differently? Because sitting around a conference room table in the exact same method as we would just on a computer with a webcam, what is different about this experience? And it has to be more than just good snacks. It has to be that
Ye
we're doing something else because we have decided to be here together, all of us. So
Yes.
that's a great message. I love it.
Yeah, I
And
mean, it's connection, right? When we're in person, we're really trying to connect, right? It's not that we can't connect here. I love the virtual space. And in fact, my social anxiety, I love the virtual space. It's much better for me. But that doesn't mean that I don't like being in person with people, but I want to feel that connection. I want to feel something deeper. I want it to be meaningful, not just I'm in this space because people need to be in this space,
yeah, I get
right?
it. There's nothing wrong with listening to Janelle Monáe while you're going down the 110 in Kansas City. I
Yeah.
mean, there's nothing wrong with that. Time and place, context. You're getting a great experience listening to her music and
Right.
sitting in the car and just singing out loud, but it's a very different experience than going to see her at the theater in
Hmm.
person with those people
Hmm.
swaying side by side. So the same
Yep.
thing. We're in person. Virtual has so many benefits, so many
Mhm.
opportunities that we are
Yeah.
gaining from it. And it's not zero sum. We're here in
Thank
person.
goodness.
What does it look like? How's this different?
Thank goodness people are starting to move that way. There's a while there that I was like, "Oh, no, it's not either or. Oh, no."
Yeah.
So, I'm glad people are starting to recognize it. I hope that it continues and we don't start let's just not do the easy way, please. Let's just
Yeah.
not do the easy way. I don't want the easy button. I'm not an easy button person. I'm just not.
Goes back
Not
to quality versus quantity.
Yeah.
I agree. We're all looking for high
It's not
quality
worth
experiences.
doing if you're not gonna do it right.
That's
It's just
right.
worth it.
That's right. The when someone offers you a sweet and would you like this? Was it worth the calories? What's the point? Why am I going to waste the calorie count on something that's just not going to be fulfilling?
Yeah,
Save it
that's
for
right.
when it matters.
Exactly, exactly. So,
This has been awesome. So, Tara,
thank you.
I just want to say thank you for being here, for sharing so many very personal experiences of yours and learnings. I truly mean that. This was a very different conversation and not one to be taken lightly. And I
Mhm.
expect a lot of people to gain so much from the lessons and experiences that you've shared here. So I just want to say thank you
Thank you.
personally.
Thanks for having me. I was glad to talk about it. I'm happy to share things with people. I'm pretty much an open book. So,
Fantastic. We're here to listen and we're here to learn.
thank you.